Tracing my hand like this definitely reminded me of those turkey drawings that we used to do in 4th grade, which was tempting, but I think I'm still going to stick with my original idea. Hello, and welcome back to Uncanny Art. In this video, I'm going to make a candelabra in the shape of a hand out of ceramics. I'm calling it a candelabra. So let's get started. Before making any sculpture, I like to make a quick sketch to figure out the details. My goal at this stage in the process is not to create the most beautiful drawing in the world, but more so just to plan things out. To start the process, I'm going to roll out a slab of clay that I'll use to trace my hand as a guide. I'm going to save my wrists a bit by hitting the clay with the rolling pin to flatten it before I start to roll it out. Tracing my hand like this definitely reminded me of those turkey drawings that we used to do in 4th grade, which was tempting, but I think I'm still going to stick with my original idea. To make the flat tracing of the hand more three-dimensional, I'm going to both remove and add material to add in the knuckles and the high and low points of the hand. I'm using a tool with a serrated edge to smooth around the material before I'll go in and clean it up a bit with a rib. Now that I've done the initial sculpting of the knuckles and fingernails on the back side of this sculpture, I'm flipping it over to work on the interior. For the meaty areas of the hand underneath the thumb as well as in the wrists, I'm going to use coils to build that area hollow so that it won't explode in the kiln. While the clay is really wet, I'm using props to elevate the fingers and the wrists so they stay where I want them to. To close up the wrist, I'm going to build inward using coils until I have a nice flat end. Now it's time for all the fiddly little details. I'm going to take little bits of clay and add them and subtract others to make all the wrinkles and folds in the hand. So now that I've finished the initial building, I'm gonna let the clay dry up just a little bit before I go in for some fine details and some cleanup. I like using a paintbrush to smooth things out before I move on to the next step. Now that the clay has hardened up a little bit, it's easier to go in and make the fine lines and wrinkles that would happen if the hand was gesturing like this. I like to use a chip brush from the hardware store to add a texture onto the surface. Now it's time to make the candle holder part of this sculpture. I'm going to roll out a coil and flatten it and cut it to size so the candle will fit in it. Because clay shrinks so much during the firing process, I'm going to make it a little larger than it needs to be. It's time to start adding the vines onto the surface of the hand. I'm going to roll out thin coils and add them onto the surface. And between doing my concept drawing and now, I've decided to add thorns to the vines instead of leaves, as I think they'll look better. So now that I've sculpted the vines and put a little texture on them as well, I'm going to let the clay dry up a little bit before I do some final cleanup and put it in the kiln. So now that I've gotten the piece out of the initial bisque firing, I'm going to go ahead and use some glaze and underglaze on the surface to build up some color and some shine in different areas. I like to use washy layers of underglaze to build up a translucent skin-like surface. I'll start by adding a little bit of underglaze to a container and spraying water into it until it's the right consistency. First up is the color blue as the undertone of the skin. Next, I'm going in with a maroony red to add some warmth to the skin tone. For the surface of the skin, I'll start with a slightly darker beige before going in with a lighter one. Now it's time to paint the vines, first with a darker green and then with a lighter green over top. I'll also add some red to the thorns to make them look just a little bit dangerous. Now it's time for a quick manicure before I go in with glaze to add some shine and to seal the surface. For the candle holder, I'm going to use a glaze called Honey Flux from Amaco that's a really beautiful milky white. Next, I'll cover the entire surface of the hand and vines with a satin matte glaze. The final touch is to add some gloss glaze to the fingernails and to the thorns. So now we have our Candelabra fresh out of the kiln, and I'm really excited with how it turned out. It did turn out a little bit more purple and darker than I expected, but it reminds me a little bit of Frankenstein, so I'm kind of happy about that. I am ready to put this up on the mantle and to put a candle in it to enjoy in my living room. I hope that if you enjoyed this video that you'll subscribe to follow along, and if you have any questions about the process that you leave me a comment. Thank you for being here, and I hope that you all go out and make some weird stuff of your own. Hello, and welcome back to Uncanny Art.